Raise your hand if you have been personally victimized by a toddler today. I don't know about you, although I probably can guess if you have a toddler, they tantrum sometimes. And by sometimes, I mean it probably happens often, unless you have some kind of angel child. Toddler tantrums, where do we even start? They can wear on us, they can knock us down. It is hard to deal with them. Even as a behavior analyst myself, it is hard to deal with my own children's tantrums. But let's kind of back up and talk about, why do tantrums happen? I can't exactly tell you every scenario why your child's tantruming, but what I want to teach you is how to figure out what is at the core of this tantrum. What happened before the tantrum, and what is maybe the tantrum trying to tell you? What is your child attempting to communicate when they're engaging in these behaviors that they're trying to do or get access to, or what are they trying to communicate with you, right? There are many reasons that your child may be screaming, crying, dropping onto the ground, flopping all around, yelling at you. There's many reasons, but they all boil down to your child is trying to communicate something with you. There's things that happen before the tantrum, there's things that happen during the tantrum, there's things that happen after the tantrum. These all play a part in why tantrums may continue. And I'm not saying that your child is gonna stop doing these things altogether. They are a kid after all, but there are ways to avoid the tantrums without feeling like you're walking on eggshells. There are ways to navigate the situation in the moment, and there are things that you can do after the tantrum happens to help you avoid them in the future. So let's get started with why tantrums may start. There's, again, many reasons that this could happen, but some that just come to mind is your child wanted the blue cup and you gave them the red cup. And rather than just saying, "Hey mom, I want the blue cup," chaos ensues. Now, in that scenario, your child was trying to get access to something. It was a cup in this scenario, but it could be a toy. It could be going somewhere. It could be playing a certain game. They were trying to get access to that item, that activity, that thing. Another reason that big behaviors might happen is your child is trying to get your attention. Now, I don't necessarily mean that they are trying to say, "Hey mom, how's it going?" But they may be trying to see what reaction they're going to get from you, whether it's a positive reaction or maybe something more on the negative side. But sometimes behaviors happen to see what that reaction is. So if you think about your little one, maybe they do something that they're not supposed to, like knock something off of a table, and you say, "Hey, don't do that." And then they knock something off again. That could be that they're trying to explore what happens, what is mom gonna do when I knock this thing off again? Is she gonna have that same reaction? Now, it could also be that your child is just trying to get your attention. This morning, my son was in his crib yelling, "Mom, mom, mom." That was a very clear indication he was trying to get my attention. He wanted me to come get him out of his crib. In that scenario, it wasn't a full-blown tantrum or anything like that, but let's say I didn't hear him or I didn't go get him right away. It's possible that he may have escalated to screaming, yelling, crying, who knows? He's a toddler, right? So again, to kind of back it up, another reason that kids may engage in these big behaviors is that they're trying to get attention. They're trying to see what reaction. It could also be that they're just trying to communicate that they need your help with something. Now, a third reason that big behaviors might happen is your child is trying to get out of something that they don't want to do. They're trying to delay it. They're trying to avoid it. They're just, seeing how can they avoid this thing. Like if you're trying to get out of the house to go do something that maybe your toddler isn't on board with, and you say, "Go put on your shoes," and they're not putting on their shoes. Maybe they'd rather play. Maybe they just hate shoes. Maybe they don't want to go where you're going. They don't want to put on their shoes. They are doing anything that they can, and maybe it escalates to that big tantrum because they are trying to avoid the task of putting on their shoes. Again, this can happen in so many different scenarios, whether it's the shoes or sitting down for dinner or going to bed. They're going to engage in those big behaviors to see if they can avoid or at least delay this thing that they don't want to do. Now, the fourth reason that these big behaviors might happen is your child is trying to communicate some kind of physical or sensory need. Maybe they are hungry, right? I don't know about you, but I get pretty hangry. and I try to manage my behavior because I'm an adult, but that is a lot harder for a child that is still learning how to have that emotional regulation. Or it could be that they are wearing a piece of clothing that feels uncomfortable for them. So maybe they don't know how to communicate that. Maybe they don't even recognize that that's what's bothering them, but they have a tag on their shirt and it's itching them, and then they're having a tantrum, and it has nothing to do maybe with the events that are going on in their day, and it's simply because they have something that is sensory and bothering them. Or maybe it's bright lights, or maybe it's a very crowded space that they're not comfortable with. Maybe it's new people in their environment that is making them uncomfortable because it's just new and different. There are so many reasons that this can be going on. Again, back to the physical component. Maybe your child is tired. I don't know about you, but my toddler is definitely gonna have a tantrum if something goes a little bit off track and they are tired. Another one could be your child is not feeling well. Maybe they're sick. Maybe they have a tummy ache. These are all things that can contribute to your child having big behaviors, big reactions to things that in your mind, you're like, that's not a big deal. For your child, it may feel like a big deal. Let's talk about ways that we can prevent these big behaviors, how we can respond to them so that over time, we're teaching our children skills that's going to help them decrease these big tantrums in the long run. So you're not dealing with a 9, 10, 12-year-old, 14-year-old, 17-year-old, of course, teenagers is a whole nother thing, but so that you're not dealing with these big tantrums at that age, that you're working on teaching them those skills as they learn how to navigate life as a little one. All right, so when it comes to how to prevent tantrums, kind of like I said before, I don't want you to walk on eggshells. That's not the point. The point is not to cater every want and need to your child. Of course, you're trying to teach them how to navigate the real world, and in the real world, things happen. But there are things that you can do ahead of time to help prevent these tantrums by teaching your child that they can use skills that they're learning to access the things that they need or want rather than engaging in these big behaviors, right? So if you know that your child tends to have a tantrum when it comes to picking a cup, this is kind of one of those classic examples, you can give them a choice. Rather than just saying, here's the blue cup, you can say, we have a blue cup and a red cup. Which one would you like? Now they might pick the blue cup and then change their mind, and there might still be a tantrum, but we'll talk about kind of how to navigate that in a minute. So choice is a great thing to kind of incorporate into your child's day to help give them some control to communicate the things that they want and need, of course, within reason. They're not going to have a choice for every scenario. Some other things that you can do is give them warnings before transitions are happening. So if you are getting ready to leave the house and they're playing something that they love and you have a feeling that this could end up in a situation where they're crying, screaming, very mad at you about leaving their game to go in the car and put on their shoes and do all that stuff, you could give them a warning. You could help make that transition fun in some way. You can tell them, hey, let's pretend like we're a tiger and go get our shoes and roar and get in the car as tigers. Something that's gonna make it fun and kind of get on that level can be really great for them. So when you think of things that you're going to do to prevent those behaviors, you really wanna focus on how can you layer in things that are gonna help your child be more on board with maybe those tasks that they don't wanna do. How can you give them an opportunity to communicate the things that they might want before behavior happens? How can you attend to any sensory needs or those physical needs, right? So if they're hungry, if they tend to have more behaviors when they're hungry, can you incorporate some snacks at certain times in the day? Can you make sure that they're getting good sleep so that you don't have this overtired toddler that is tantruming because they just can't even think straight? And then what can you do also to give them a way to communicate when they're trying to get your attention in a way that is positive versus looking for those negative reactions? So again, you're thinking about what skills can I promote, what skills can I help teach my child before behaviors happen that are going to help avoid those behaviors. And then if the behaviors do occur, how can you use those skills that you're teaching them to navigate the tantrums in the moment? Now, I'm not gonna go into every single strategy that you can use if a behavior happens because there's so many factors to consider when it comes to what your child might do, why that's happening, but the gist is that you really want to hone in on the skills that are lacking in those scenarios and how can you give your child the encouragement in the moment to use them. Now, I'm not saying in the middle of a screaming tantrum, you're going to stop and be like, you need to ask for the blue cup or the blue cup's not available or whatever, but you do want to help your child regulate, help them calm down from the tantrum, and then try to remedy the situation, right? So if there is a tantrum happening and you have to give your child the red cup and they want the blue cup because the blue cup is dirty or whatever, you're gonna navigate that, right? You want to validate that this behavior you want to validate that this situation is challenging for your child. I understand that you want the blue cup, but right now the blue cup is dirty, so we only have the red cup available. They may still not be super happy with that, but they're hearing that you understand why they're upset. You can always make a statement that kind of just validates that you hear that they are upset and try to help them get through that scenario. So that could be helping them get on board with using the red cup, letting them know the blue cup will be available at a later time. Whatever it is, you're going to help support your child in that situation. Now, I also know that that's not always easy, right? Our emotions get involved. We might be tired. We might be hungry. We might need to go do something else. Maybe we're making dinner while this is all going on. And it's not always easy to kind of get down on our child's level and talk them through the scenario. And maybe that doesn't even work well for your child. The key here isn't the strategy itself, right? I'm not gonna give you a specific scenario and strategy for everything that could possibly happen, because how could I ever do that, right? But what I want you to understand is the more you can figure out why a behavior is happening, the more you can help teach your child the skills to navigate that in the future. If your child is screaming and yelling about a blue cup and you give them the blue cup, then they may learn that next time they can scream and yell to get the blue cup, right? And you don't want that. You don't want them to scream and yell every single time they don't get the thing that they want. You want them to be able to communicate ahead of time that they want the blue cup. You want them to be able to understand that sometimes the blue cup is not available. If you need to take your child out for, some errands and they don't want to put their shoes on, but you know that they have to put their shoes on to walk outside because the ground is hot or cold or whatever, you can't let them get out of that, right? If you do let your child get out of it for whatever reason and you carry them to the car and they don't end up putting their shoes on, then they may engage in those same behaviors next time to avoid putting their shoes on. Then you have this cycle where your child never wants to put their shoes on. Similar to the blue cup. They're gonna scream and yell because they want that blue cup. They're gonna knock the thing over on the table because they want your reaction, if you always give the reaction. So you have to think of how can you also modify your own behavior when you respond to your child so that you're teaching them those skills that are gonna help them be successful, and you're not necessarily feeding into this behavior continuing to happen, right? Sometimes we do it by accident. Sometimes we have to do the thing that we know might not be the best to get through a situation, right? Like if my son was screaming this morning in his crib, what would I have done? Eventually I would have had to go in there even if he was screaming because I want to support him. But we don't want to create a cycle where our child is engaging in these big behaviors and we're continuing to see them. We want to figure out how to stop them, but not just stop them in the moment. We want to stop them long term. So you have to really hone in on why it's happening. So I know that that was a lot of information. We kind of went on this journey on different reasons that big behaviors happen, different reasons and ways to navigate tantrums, the skills that we're trying to teach our child along the way, and how can we get to the other side, right? Again, I'm not saying that tantrums are going to go away altogether, but we can figure out a way to navigate them so that we're not dealing with giant tantrums, that they're not getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but over time they're getting shorter and shorter and shorter, less and less and less frequent, and you're teaching your child how to navigate their life. I hope that you found all that information helpful and that it's going to not only help you navigate your day-to-day life, but if you're a toddler parent, which I'm guessing you are because you're watching this, you are also going to be navigating or already are navigating potty training. And I'm a behavior analyst and I also specialize in potty training. So if you want more information on potty training and how to navigate the ups and downs of being a toddler mama, make sure you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel.